All right, welcome back, everyone. As you recall, last time we looked at escape characters, we looked at print statements, we looked at comments. Now we're going to look at string variables, which is a stepping stone in learning how to make our code interactive. It won't quite be as interactive yet, but we will get there to the point that whoever's running our code can interact with it and have it do different things. But before we do that, we really need to just learn about string variables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new file. Now I have a folder open, and hopefully you have a folder open too. If you don't, go to File, Open Folder, and then pick wherever you saved your code, and then use that as like your main folder. It's best if you make a folder where you're going to save all of your code to, and then you can make subfolders in there if you need to for each unit or each section if you really want to go that far. It just helps to keep everything organized. For me, I already have a unit 1 folder, so I'm just going to create a new file by clicking new file here. If you don't have that, you can go up to here, new file, just like we did last time, but I'm going to just use this, and then I can name the file here. I'm just going to call it string variables.py. I don't like using spaces in my file names. Of course, with Python you can. Other programming languages you can't, and that's just kind of why I don't. I recommend not, because if you try to learn another language, which if you choose to continue down this path, you probably will learn another programming language. It's a good habit to just stay out of that problem down the road. Anyway, we have string variables.py. Let's learn what a string variable is. So let's say I need to track what the user's name is. So I could have user name, which is all one word. But if you wanted to say first name, you could do first capital N name. And then I can set equal to Jane. Now, the reason why we use a lowercase and then an uppercase for the second word, so here first is lowercase f, then uppercase n, is because it's easier to read. In Python, it's acceptable to use camel case like this, where it's lowercase and then uppercase for every. So if I had first name here, it'd be like that. But I'm not going to add here because I'm only going to do a first and last name. If I wanted to do last name, I would follow the same convention, last name, change it to Doe. Okay. Why is this important? Because it helps your code look nice, and it's easier to read if it's not all lowercase. You actually slowly train your brain to recognize the uppercases and be able to read them as separate words. If you don't like this, there's another option where you use underscore and all lowercase. So underscore name. Both options are acceptable. However, if you pick camel case, you stick with that for your whole program. If you choose snake case, just stick with that. Don't mix the two. If you mix the two, it looks really ugly, and usually that will result in the communication not being as good as it could be. So always stick with one naming convention. Both are acceptable in Python. Okay, now let's see if let's say I want to print the first name. All I have to do is print. Normally we would add quotations here and type Jane, but in this case I don't need to add quotations. I want to print what's in the variable first name, and what's in the variable is Jane, because I said first name is equal to Jane. That means whenever I print first name, the computer will know that it's Jane, because it made a spot in memory so that it remembers first name is Jane. Pretty straightforward. Now if I want to print the last name, pretty simple. Print, same idea, last name. Now on the example on the website, I use camel case, and in this case I'm using snake case, just to show you that both work. I'm going to hit save, so Control S and then F5 to run, just to see it so far, and we have Jane Doe. Perfect. What if I want both on the same line? Remember, whenever we type print, this means we're printing a new line, and I can print first name. It auto-filled for me, so I was able to press enter. Remember to add spaces, and then I'm going to do a plus. Sorry, you add a space, then plus, then space, and now I'm going to type last name, and auto-filled, so I was able to press enter. So now it knows I want first name and last name. If I run this, so I'm going to save, Control S, F5, it printed Jane Doe, but there's no space in between. Even though I added 2 spaces here, that didn't make a difference. So to actually do this, to print the first name and the last name, comma, last name. So this follows the same rules as like English. You would add the comma here with not a space after the word, or the variable name in this case. Comma, last name. Commas in print mean add a space after whatever variable's been printed. So after the first name's been printed, add a space, and then print whatever's after. So in this case, it's the last name. So if I press Control S, it saves. If I press F5, it'll print Jane Doe with a space. Okay. There we go. Well, what if I want the full name? Well, full name. Oh, I almost messed up. I'm so used to using camel case. I'll use camel case after this section just because it's what I'm used to. So full name is equal to the first name. And I can't do comma last name. Oops, there we go. Because then that's going to do something different. And if I print full name, so it's going to print all of these first, and then it'll print the full name last. So see how I can like change things, add variables after a print? That's because the code reads from top to bottom. So it reads this, then this, then this, and it just reads from top to bottom like a human would. That means that if I try to use full name before this line here, because this actually tells the computer what full name is, because it says full name is equal to first name comma last name. If I try to print full name here, I'll get an error, which I'll show you in a minute. But I want to see what this does, because the comma should make it into a tuple. Yeah. So a tuple is a different data type that we're not going to worry about. So in our circumstances, comma doesn't work the way that we want it to, like it did in print. So instead of a comma, I can do plus. Now, remember, when we printed first name plus last name, it printed the 2 names together. Like we can even see that here. So this isn't actually the first and last name with a space in between. If I want to add a space, I need to actually put in quotations a space and then add the last name like this. Now I have the full name. So if I press Control S, F5, there we go. Now I have Jane Doe twice because it happens here and here. Because print treats commas differently than string variables do. So for our purposes in Unit 1, commas are only in print statements. They're not inside variable declaration statements. That's what this is here. Now, let me show you really quickly. If I try to print full name, even though it autofills because it recognizes that it exists, right now, if I mouse over it, it says full name is not defined. Because full name's defined on line 10, the computer can't read ahead and then go back, at least not yet. We're going to learn about different flow control in a later unit. But if I press F5, I get an error because it's not defined yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete it because it needs to get defined, then you can print it. Okay? Be very careful about what you do and the order that you do things, because order matters. All right. So that covers the first and last name string variables. Let's look at sentence, because so far we've only done words. If I want to make a sentence, I can do sentence equals, this is a sentence, and it'll hold the whole sentence. I could even do a paragraph. If I can spell paragraph, equals, and remember, to do multi-line comments, it's very similar to do a multi-line string. You do triple quotes. This is a paragraph. And then now I can press enter with multiple lines. And then it ends in 3 quotes. There we go. And let's just print those at the end. Print sentence and print paragraph. Okay, so those should be the last 2 things that print. It says this is a sentence, and then it prints the whole paragraph. It's 3 lines, just like I programmed it. Perfect. One last thing I want to cover is how to print string and text all in one go. So you could do a print statement and say, your name is, then add a comma. Notice I didn't add a space here. That's because I'm adding a comma, and a comma means add a space after whatever I've printed here. So this is automatically adding a space for me. And then I'm going to say full name. Your name is full name. And you're awesome. So now the last thing that should print is your name is whatever our full name was, right? Which our full name should be Jane Doe. And then, and you're awesome. And remember, I have a comma here. That means it'll add a space before the and. So if I run this, your name is Jane Doe and you're awesome. Okay, awesome. Perfect. One last thing I want to show you is string methods. So string methods, I can't teach you every single string method. Sorry, this isn't the last thing. It's the second last thing. I can't teach you every single string method because there's so many that exist. So for example, this sentence, I can do dot upper. Notice that for methods, you need to add a dot after the variable, the method name, and then empty parentheses at the end. Some methods will require things in the parentheses, but we'll focus on those later. And it's going to convert every single letter in the sentence variable. So this here is going to get converted to an uppercase. You could do the opposite with a dot lower. So there's 2 methods I've taught you. I'm not going to teach you them all, but there is a link to a good string methods resource that you can search through using Control F. Remember, you can use Control F in this as well, and you can type in stuff like sentence, and it'll highlight every time as sentence. Same thing with your like web browser and that link specifically, so that you can search through it quickly and find what you need to. So anyway, dot upper converts everything to uppercase. So if I save and run, I'll just show you really quick. This is a sentence. It's all uppercase now. And last thing I want to talk about is substrings and characters. If I wanted to get just the second character of the full name, so full name, I would add, these are actually brackets, they're the square brackets. It starts counting at 0, so 0 will actually give me the first character. If I want to print the second character of the full name, I would use 1 because we start counting at 0. So if we start at 0, 1 is the second character, not the first, because 0 is the first, so on and so forth. If I want to print a range of characters, so if I want to start at maybe the second character and go up to, but not including the 5th character, I would do 1 to 5. So I press save and then run. So because it's Jane and it ends on a space, it actually prints a space here. As I highlight it, you can see there's also more spaces over here. So I guess that doesn't really help us. Maybe I should include one more just to make it easier for us to see. There we go. Jane or Ain D. So now you can print substrings. what if I want to print like a last character or a second last character or something like that? Well, there's a few different ways you can do that. To get the last character, it's actually -1. So you do full name, brackets, -1 will get you the last character. Second last character, -2, so on and so forth. So you can use a combination of a substring and this negative number to determine where you want to end or even where you want to start. So maybe you want to start at, I don't know, the 6th to last character and go all the way to the end. I could just leave it like this. If I don't put anything here, it goes all the way to the end. And conversely, if I want to start at the beginning, I just do this and it'll go all the way to the 6th last character. There's so many different ways you can do this. So I would strongly encourage you to experiment with this. So if I add a comment here, this would be sub string and characters. There we go. Save and run one more time just to see what happened. Because Jane Doe isn't a very big name. It goes all the way to the 6th last character, and N is the 6th last character, and it goes all the way to E. Perfect. Okay. All the best on your next set of activities, and I'll catch you in the next one.